Welcome to Professor Sky's Spam channel. This is where I talk about anything that is not new music. And yesterday I saw Scream 5, Scream 2022, Scream. These are all different things we can call it. I'm going to be calling it Scream 5 for this movie. And I want to tell you why it's all about The Last Jedi. I am going to get to a spoiler-filled review. First, I will just say that it's highly enjoyable, easily the best Scream movie since Scream 4. And it is art and not commerce. I mean, it is also commerce, but as far as sequels go, as far as honoring the true nature of what makes the Scream movies interesting and good, it's how it's always been on that side of things, where it's really about art, it's really about artists, it's really about artistry, not really about the money that it can make. But I'm going to get into a more detailed description of why all those things are and why I think all those things. But let me tell you first a little bit about my story with the Scream franchise. I am the luckiest Scream fan that has ever existed. Let me tell you why. My introduction to Scream was Halloween, 1996. If you're a Scream fan out there, you're going to go, Professor Sky? Yes, Chet? The movie didn't come out till December. I know. I got to see it on Halloween. Now you might be thinking, okay, Sky, you must have been some kind of super fan or something. No, I was just a 19-year-old lucky doofus. This is what happened. I grew up in Massachusetts, and when you grow up near Boston, that means you grow up near a lot of great colleges. And there's an amazing theater in Harvard Square called the Harvard Film Archive. Now, it's nothing compared to the Film Archive up here in Rochester, New York, which is 10 times better. Suck at Harvard. But the Harvard Film Archive is still an amazing institution, and what they do is they show a lot of old and interesting movies. They literally have an archive, and they take things out, and it's not commercial. Again, it's about the art of cinema, and you go, and when I was 19 years old, I fancied myself to be a cinephile, and I'm like, I love this. And the thing I was most excited about was right then, in the fall of 1996, which was my freshman year in college, they had a Werner Herzog festival. Now, I have a deep and burning love of the films of Wim Wenders and Werner Herzog of the 70s. I could talk about that some other time, maybe on this channel, but I loved their movies growing up in high school. When I would go down to the video store, I was trying to rent Aguirre, Wrath of God, and Alice in the Cities, and King of the Road, and all these, Caspar Hauser. So I was going and I was watching all these weird German movies, and I loved Werner Herzog. Now, it's difficult. It's difficult to because I lived 45 minutes away from Boston at that point, where I was going to college. And my friend Brad, he was at Brandeis, so he's a little bit closer. That's 15 minutes away. But we would meet a couple times a week to go to these movies. And some of them were tough, his early movies, Even Dwarfs Started Small, great title, but just a very hard movie to watch. But I loved his movies, and we'd go and we'd see. But there were two things that were sort of on the docket that we were really excited about. The last day, he was going to come and give a speech, which we saw, but we missed the good showing because a bunch of fly-by-night jerks bought up all the tickets, even though we'd gone to almost every movie. And the other thing we were most excited for was a movie I hadn't yet seen that was going to be playing on Halloween. Werner Herzog's version of Nosferatu, starring Klaus Kinski. Phantom der Nacht. So here I am, this cinephile, this lover of Werner Herzog, this lover of this idea who's been going to these movies and is feeling this richness. And even though I wasn't going to Harvard, I was benefiting from the institutional greatness. And I show up on Halloween, and there's so many people there. And Brad and I are like, wow, people are really into some Klaus Kinski in this city, huh? And we keep walking, and there's news cameras, or at least people with cameras. I don't really know. And then we go, and it's kind of a weird entrance into the Harvard Film Archive movie theater. And we walk up, and there's this weird sort of word. It says Scream. And we kind of walk up, and we're like, oh yeah, 2 tickets for Nosferatu. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. We're actually booking this out for a free preview of a new movie. I don't want to see no new movie. Oh no, it's by Wes Craven. Wes Craven? What, Nightmare on Elm Street? He hasn't done a good movie in a while. No, I want to see Nosferatu. I'm sorry, sir, it's not available. So there I am, 19 years old, arrogant as hell, thinking I'm the only one who really understands movies, And I'm sitting there and I'm just grumbling under my breath, and my friend Brad's like, this sucks, what's going on? Stupid. I don't watch some stupid Drew Barrymore's in this movie. Oh, great. Oh, wow, we're going to see a Drew Barrymore movie instead of Klaus Kinski's and Werner Herzog's amazing recreation of the silent movie classic. We're sitting there, we're so pissed. I'd never heard of Scream. Didn't know what Wes Craven was up to. And we left that movie theater so angry. Amazingly enough, the studio set this all up, right? So Dimension, Weinstein's, set this all up to test, like, how do people react to this movie, right? So they had people who were kind of looking around from the studio who were trying to, just gauge everybody's reaction. And this woman saw us leave. Now, in 1996, in October of 1996, I was still what in today's parlance would be called an incel. It didn't mean I was an angry, hateful person, but I'd never had a girlfriend. I never had any luck with girls at all. I was just miserable. So the person from the studio was a very attractive woman who, stopped Brad and I and basically, did that thing that, salespeople do where they sort of flirt you into changing your mind. So she was talking to us and she was like, oh, it's a great movie though. You're really going to enjoy it. And we're like, no, no. But, we're trying to seem cool while at the same time, And she's like, listen, if you don't like the movie, come back afterwards, find me, and I'll give you your money back. So I do a little bit of quick mental math. Now, mind you, I had no game. I didn't think that I was going to go out on a date with this woman. But I did think, well, if I don't like the movie, I at least get to talk to her again. It was rough. I'm glad the internet didn't exist back then, because I could just be lonely without thinking it was a systematic problem with everybody else. So I say, okay, fine, I'll go to the movie. And Brad and I go and we sit down and the theater is packed. And of course it's packed with people who love Wes Craven, people who love horror movies, people who know about this. Brad and I are just sitting there trying to watch that. So when I tell you that this is the best experience I've ever had in a movie theater, nothing will ever come close. Okay. Watching new Star Wars with my kids came close. Okay, that was very exciting. But it was incomprehensibly fun. Unbelievably scary. Imagine seeing Scream having never seen The Mask before. I had never seen The Mask. It is a terrifying mask. It's been overused, it's been seen, it's a scary movie, all that. I get it. But it is the scariest mask in horror movies. It is the scariest face in horror movies. And I got to experience it, seeing it for the first time when it came through that window at Drew Barrymore. By the end of that opening scene, I had just lost my mind. And then the rest of the movie plays out, and it was fun, and it was exciting, and I was a Clerks fan, so I knew about that I had some inkling that meta cinema might be arriving, but this was the perfect meta cinema. I'd watched all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, I'd watched all the Friday the 13th, I hadn't watched Halloween yet because I was too scared. I can't explain what I did when I was a kid. I was just that way. So when they were going through all the rules, I'm like, finally someone's saying it. I got so excited. It was like a movie for me, about me, by me, at me. Everything about it was so exciting. I had such an amazingly fun time. My friend Brad was so unbelievably scared of The Mask that he made me, I'm a prankster with Brad. He told me to never ever scare him with The Mask ever, and I never have. Brad, if you're out there watching, I've never done it. I've never scared you with a mask. I said I wouldn't. Little did he know that mask would become so ubiquitous that it would lose a lot of its own meaning. But we left that movie theater, and it's like the way people describe seeing Star Wars for the first time. I just felt like, well, everything's changed. Whatever that was, that's the future of movies. That was the greatest thing I've ever seen. My only gripe was that they used Red Right Hand by Nick Cave, and that's a song I loved, and my 19-year-old self thought that it belonged to me because people who consume art own it. More on that soon. And that was just my experience, and it was so great. And then I was waiting for Scream to come out, and I was telling everybody about it, and I was saying, you can wait till this movie comes out, and then it comes out, does poorly in the theater. does poorly in the theater another week. And then eventually word of mouth comes, and then everybody gets to have that feeling that I felt. So that's my experience with the Scream franchise. That's my opening, which couldn't have possibly been better. I thought 2 was excellent. I think the opening scene in 2 is the best scene in all of Scream movies. It's an astoundingly scary and horrible and horrible and horrifying and well-filmed scene. I thought 3, when I first saw it, was so bad that it had to be intentionally bad. And then I watched it last week, and I realized, oh no, it's just a good comedy. 4 was good, but I kind of forgot about it. When I rewatched it, I liked it a lot more. But in general, what I would say about the whole franchise is that it's always good. It's sometimes great, but it's always good. And it's not always good in the way that Friday the 13th movies are always good, where there's like kind of a campy, like, well, we know, or James Bond movies. It may be the most consistent franchise in cinema, I suppose, aside from Star Wars, which I think is always good. So, now that's my non-spoilery thoughts about Scream 22, about Scream 5. Let me tell you what I think about this movie. So, spoilers, if you haven't seen it, please go away. If you have seen it, please stay. I'm going to get to my Last Jedi theory. I'm going to sip my coffee first. Okay. I went into this movie with no trailers. Perfect idea. Totally blind. I didn't know who was coming back, who was going to be there. I had no idea. So I was as close as I could be to that experience that I had back in 1996. I remember thinking, I just hope if this movie is bad, it is about being bad. Which is part of why I like 3 so much, is part of 3 is about being bad. Here's some disparate thoughts. My wife said that she's very happy that girls can be creepy. That's very true. The girls in this movie are very creepy. The guys in this movie aren't that creepy. I mean, you watch the original Scream and most of the other Scream movies, and all the dudes are just like, In this movie, it's all the girls who are like, every single girl in the movie, with the exception of the 2 sisters at the center, are like creepy enough where you're like, ugh. And I think that's a move forward, because of course, creepiness is not specific to any particular gender. In particular, the scene in the basement between the killer and the new Randy, the Randy Meeks' niece. That scene, I predict, I haven't seen it twice yet, I predict that will be the scene of the movie. Like, that'll be the scene where people just go, oh, that's it. The acting, the excitement, the tension. There's one woman, Liv, I think is her name, the one who's trying to seduce the football player, who has weird eyeliner, and I hate it. Like, I hate it so much. I haven't hated makeup that much since Beetlejuice. and who was it? It was a famous actress who had the hair that went up like that. You know what I mean? In Beetlejuice, that hair that comes into like a little curly cute, like a distracting, terrible choice of face accoutrement. It's the actress from Schitt's Creek. Well, you tell me in the comments. People love telling me stuff in the comments. Tell me, Catherine O'Hara. Damn it, I remembered. Don't tell me in the comments. Yeah, so just that eyeliner where it looks like her eyes are open when they're closed goes back to that sense of creepy, just very creepy girls. The directors of this movie, I have not seen anything else they've done. I'm going to correct that this weekend. I'm going to watch Ready or Not this weekend. I don't care if I have to actually pay to stream it. I'm going to do that. They did a lot of great things, beyond the fact that they made a movie, which again is a piece of art and not a simple piece of commerce. It is a very clear thesis that's well expressed. It's a good connection to the past. It's a good way to move forward. But they also do a lot of things that I don't think Wes Craven did as well. They do all these fake outs, these subtle, almost subliminal things which keep you stressed out. One time during the party scene, someone takes a shot, but the way they take a shot and the way that it's framed, it looks like it's about to be a stab. But I talked to my family and they didn't notice it. I watched it with them. Everybody noticed the weird, like all the way throughout the movie, there's all these things where in the background there's something black with something white over it so that you think it's the killer behind them. So everyone noticed the thing in the basement. But right after that, there's a woman with this long black hair and a white ribbon. It's the same thing. It's that black and white. It's like they tap into that primal image recognition. You know that thing where, like, in order to save ourselves from saber-tooths or something, we have to be able to sense movement with great acuity. We have to be able to sense depth. We have to be able to differentiate between, when the grass is moving and when it's not, and that's how we stay safe in our caves. You know what I'm saying? So my brother loves talking about that stuff. I'll have him on sometime. But like, we're primed to be ready to prepare ourselves to see the white on black, the white on black, the white on black, but it's not there. The main difference between Scream 5 and the rest, I think, is I don't feel that this movie is mean-spirited at all. Now, the killers are mean. The killers are cruel. The killers are maybe the cruelest killers of the whole series. But the people aren't mean. Like, the kids aren't mean. There's a callousness to all the screams around the murders, whether it's the stab-a-thon in Scream 4 or the people talking about their friend getting killed at the fountain the next day, sliced and diced, in Scream 1. That's been a through line where people are just amazingly callous about murder. Yes, there's still the party here, but in general, the way that I feel about this movie is not that it is that mean. It just doesn't have that kind of dark side to it. I sort of want to say that this is basically a better Scream 4, which is terrible for me to say because I'm one of those auteur jerks who believes that a filmmaker is the most important thing, and that if Craven and Williamson made something, a couple of dudes named Chad or something can't do better. But it's sort of a better 4, and 4 is sort of a better 3. But 5 is not a better 3. There's a lot of weird things going on. I think that's part of what's fun about these movies, especially as the franchise gets bigger. There's so many different ways of thinking about them. Is this a sort of in a way, this is sort of ending the story of Woodsboro, but in another way, it's not. Anyways, I love the title. I love the title because I hate the title. Halloween 2018 was the third movie called Halloween, and it was a sequel to the movie called Halloween. That kind of bizarre need to not, these naming conventions, how we've gone away from highlighting that things are sequels, the crappy reboots, the fact that they called it Scream does what Scream does best. What is great about Scream? Scream is a crappy slasher movie, and it's a delightful commentary on slasher movies. And mind you, when I say a crappy slasher movie, I mean a good slasher movie. But slasher movies themselves are seen as being a lesser genre. They shouldn't be, but they are. So it's a fine example of a lower genre wrapped in an excellent version of a higher genre. So calling it Scream, immediately I go, oh my God, that is perfect. That is the perfect title because it's already pissing me off. It's already making me think about that damn Halloween thing, which was just too confusing. I love the way in which they discuss the two things that are happening in horror right now. If I had a problem with Scream 4, it's that it didn't really lean into the evolution of horror. It mentioned Saw movies, it mentioned torture porn, but it didn't really go into it. It mentioned crappy reboots, but it didn't really go into it. This one, the Niece Weeks, Randy's niece, describes what a requel is in a really great way. And this is paired with a previous discussion, an ongoing discussion of the nature of elevated horror, like Hereditary or Midsommar, right? And I think this is fascinating. I mean, it is a perfect requel and commentary on a requel. It does what Scream does, just like Scream 2. Scream 2 is a crappy sequel and a good commentary about a sequel. This is a crappy requel and a good comment about requels. It does all that. It does that Scream thing. It does the postmodern thing of being the thing while talking about the thing at the same time. But what I love is by starting the movie, not with talking about requels, but by talking about elevated horror, it reminds us of something important. Scream is and has always been elevated horror. That's what Scream is. It doesn't belong with Halloween. It belongs with the Babadook. That's what I learned when I was 19 years old and I was sitting there at Harvard Film Archive. It's movies about movies, metatextual, that level of abstraction and self-referentiality, especially the fact that it was the first of the horror movies to do that, it was the first real major intrusion of postmodernism into pop culture. Put in the comments if there's something else I'm missing, but I really think this is the first major, or it was the strongest push towards postmodernism in pop culture in the 90s, was that movie. There were things before, and there were things simultaneous, but that was the killing blow that made sure that we entered into the postmodern, that we entered into the metaverse. That was the movie that did it. Because it's an elevated horror. Its meta-ness is elevated. And they didn't have to say it. They didn't have to say it. But it reminds us that that's true. Okay, Last Jedi. Why am I talking about The Last Jedi? Well, obviously, what makes me so fascinated about this is the fact that the killers are fanboys. A fanboy and a fangirl. And that it's about toxic fandom. I just want to say, they make it explicitly about the reaction to Last Jedi. Let me tell you how. When we see the scene of Scream 8, it's a very brief scene. And what they say is, is this even Scream? Is this even what it's supposed to be? What you see in Scream 8 is subverting of expectations, which is why Rian Johnson, the director of Last Jedi, was so hated. Now, I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm in the Star Wars universe. I have a Star Wars podcast that I've been doing for 11 years. I'm a real deal Star Wars guy, right? And I loved Last Jedi. I thought it was a great movie. I thought it was a spectacular movie. But I understand people's frustration, and the frustration comes from the fact that people feel like they own the franchise. The artists don't own the franchise. The consumers own the franchise. That's why I believe George Lucas's movies cannot be outdone. That's why I believe George Lucas is such a genius that when he made the prequels, he made the movies that he wanted to make and not the movies that people wanted to see. I know you're going to go, well, anyone can make a movie someone doesn't want to see. No, they can't. Not like those movies. He is an artist fighting for artist rights against the consumer. That's why I put Kanye West in the same category as George Lucas, because he does what he wants to do as an artist, despite what his fans say, and they're going to cry about the old Kanye, and they're going to cry about Empire Strikes Back, but they can sit there and cry, because they don't matter. What matters is the artist. So, going back to Last Jedi, they mentioned the director of Stab 8 as the guy who directed Knives Out. Of course. The guy who directed Knives Out is Rian Johnson. It was his first movie after The Last Jedi. And I made a movie on my Star Wars channel, I'll include a link to it up there, about how Knives Out is actually about The Last Jedi. I think that's actually intentional as well. So The Last Jedi represents toxicity in fans, represents how fans believe that they own something. And why is Scream 5 so good? Because Randy's niece, I'm sorry I don't know her name. I'll know her name eventually, I'm going to be watching all these YouTube videos, and I'm going to be listening to all the podcasts, and her name is going to be more important to me than Randy, but for now she's Randy's niece. She explains precisely why the killer kills, and that it's about ownership and the way that people feel that they own the movies. And I have news for you. All my friends on Facebook who hate Book of Boba Fett, all my friends on Facebook who hate this or hate that, and only like Ghostbusters because Ghostbusters gave them what they want. You're a child who doesn't deserve good art. You deserve chicken fingers and macaroni and cheese every day for dinner for the rest of your life. That's what you enjoyed when you were a kid. Remember the chicken fingers? So you eat your chicken fingers and your macaroni and cheese and leave art to artists. And they'll make art, and new people will experience it, and they'll enjoy it, and you'll have your memories. You'll have your little Ghostbuster pajamas, and you can hold on to those for as long as you like. You don't ever have to buy new pajamas. You can just sit there eating your mac and cheese, bro. Enjoy it. But stop getting mad at Rian Johnson. Stop getting mad at people who are trying to move art forward. That's why Scream 5 is so great. It is a beautiful summary of the state that we are in now, in which these toxic fans, and what is toxic is not that they're mean or that they insult people, it's that they think they own something that they don't. Scream 5 is about the reaction to The Last Jedi, in specific, and that phenomena in general. I do have a couple nitpicks. I don't know really why they introduced that greaser character, Stu's nephew or something, and killed by the car. I don't know. My biggest nitpick is the killer guy is watching a YouTube video about Stab 8. And his girlfriend calls, and the whole movie he's pretending he doesn't know about Stab, even though he's a Stab super fan. He's like, oh, you're right. People are saying this about Stab 8. That doesn't make sense because he's by himself. So that's too much of a misdirection. Because for me, I didn't believe he did it because of that scene. I'm like, well, why? I thought maybe he's lying about Stab. And if he's lying about Stab, then he's the killer. But if he's watching that scene for the first time, then he has truly never, if he's alone in his hotel room and he's watching a YouTube video about Stab 8, that means that he does not already know about Stab 8. So that was one misdirection too far. My biggest issue is something that they missed. And I think they missed it on purpose. The most glaring thing about this movie, on a superficial level, the thing that will piss off many toxic fans, is the changing demographics of modern movies. It is no longer, thank God, all straight white dudes talking about straight white dude problems with other straight white dudes. That's what most of the Scream movies have been. Sometimes they comment on it, but that's sort of what it's about. With this new crew of kids, it is very of its moment. Where not only is everyone racially diverse, but they're also racially ambiguous. It's very, not clear. I don't know, it seems it must be a casting decision, where you have to sort of say, no problem with it. But why are you not commenting on it in the movie? Why is that not a comment? Because that would be a perfect joke about look at how much we're in a requel. Look at how ambiguously diverse our whole group is. And there's even one of us who's gay, the change from Stab 1 to Stab 8, if you're keeping up with Hollywood trends, would have to have that diversity. Now, I'm not calling it forced diversity because the world is diverse and this is necessary. But it is noticeably different from the other movies. And that would have been a little bit of meta commentary which would have led to the other part, which is that toxic fans are racists. Almost with no exception. People I know on Facebook who are most anti-Last Jedi are also often the most kind of racist, but would never say racist stuff, but hold a lot of racist beliefs. That belief that you own something in your past, that connection to nostalgia. Nostalgia is a lot of what fuels fascism and racism. So I really think that this movie sidestepped race completely. And I understand why. But what if they didn't? What if they made the main killer also super mad about diversity, forced diversity, super mad about people killing his childhood, all kind of weird dog whistles for wishing things were like in the 80s, back when Reagan was making sure that the class divide gets bigger and bigger. Why? I know why they didn't do that, because that would have been polarizing. That would have got people coming out and saying, it's just like Matrix. It's just it's an SJW movie. But they missed out on a certain commentary there. And also they could have mentioned that the sisters were like the sisters in Frozen. Just they were. It was like a Frozen dynamic. And that's great. I love the Frozen dynamic. I'm very happy that women are allowed to exist in movies in ways that are not just in relationship to men, and it's constantly growing and evolving, and it's a great thing. But they missed a throwaway joke there. So there's my thoughts. There's my thoughts on Scream 5. Really enjoyed it. I'm probably going to see it again this weekend. It's likely. It's that good. It's awesome. Okay. Well, until next time, thank you for watching my spam channel. There's the camera.